Time passes us by without seeming to instigate a certain change in our overall lives, but in fact it seems like it goes on a constant routine because it has to, due to its natural design. Yet it's far beyond that. If we had the chance to ask it and find an answer, it would have a lot to say, for it not only passes us by, but leaves tracks of its epoch and many physical, geographical, and mental changes to develop and adapt. While some stand as monuments of history, yet time never stops in what it has to do and leaves quite the footprints. On this episode of Eritrea at a Glance, we take a peek at one of the remains from the Italian colonization that still stands in Asmara, right around Haz Haz and Imba Galiano areas of our capital. These remnants still stand today and serve the same purpose they used to, and that is a home. We will observe who lived in them back in the Italian colonization and now, long after that. Before we jump right at our core concept, let's just swift by a small history of an Italian general that served his time when Italy annexed Eritrea, and which his name is still sounded and known for a neighborhood in Asmara. Giuseppe Galliano was an Italian general to the Eritrean soldiers of the colonization known as Askaris, back from 1932 to 38. He was buried after his death in this hill on the area of Imba Galiano in Asmara. He was known for his many contributions to the colonization during that time, thus the pyramid-like statue that stands on his grave on top of the hill and the name Imba Galiano of the area, meaning the Hill of Galliano. Having his name until now is for various reasons of his historical time of existence and during the period of the Italian colonization in Eritrea. Later in the year 1938, the Italian colonization decided to build huts-like shelters for the Eritrean soldiers that served in various battles for the annexation as a way of compensation. Those homes were strategically planned to be built in Haz Haz, as so they were. Within 2 years' time, the complete housing plan was finalized and given to those appointed to them by the Italian administration. The architecture of the huts was quite different from what the Italians had been building. Somehow it was meant to resemble an Eritrean culture in their building plan intentions. That specific housing project was known as Villaggio Azzurro, having both upper and lower estate. Thereon, the management privilege of the upper Villaggio Azzurro after completion plan was given to an Eritrean man who served as a soldier for the annexation administration, known as Degiat Abraha Waldai, to cover the task of supervision and on the overall post-constructional administration, for being a man of many military medals in the colonization's army. Thereby, he was given a certain special type of hut to live in that has an attic room at the top. Similarly, Degiat Ibrahim Hussein had the same privilege of supervision and administration of the housing on the lower part of Villaggio Azzurro. And as so, he was also given a similar special hut as Degiat Abraha Waldai of the upper Villaggio Azzurro. Back then, it was told that the upper and lower Villaggio Azzurro was classified with certain flags of indication. Mrs. Lemlem Abraha, the daughter of Degiat Abraha Waldai of upper Villaggio Azzurro, who still lives in her father's hut, said that Haz Haz area wasn't built before the Villaggio Azzurro plan in whatsoever. She said that her family had lived in a hut on a police camp nearby way before these housings were built, and that her father's hut was primarily built as an initiation of the whole building plan, while the rest of the huts were built later on in 6 months' time. According to Mrs. Lemlem, she is the last child of the Degiat Abraha Waldai. Her siblings live on their own, while her father's hut is left for her to live in. On the way and how the huts were built, Mrs. Lemlem says that they had a zinc metal layer on the roof and grass on top of them to avoid the metal from transferring heat into the hut during the day, while the rest being a regular hut made of brick and thick cement walls. The interior roof has wooden logs to support the top layer of metal zinc and grass. Due to time and climate change, the grass has physically left its position on the huts, and to place them back or even to find the same quality of grass used back then is a bit difficult. Difficult in a sense of both labor-wise in replacing them every time they tend to fall and finding their access due to different social whereabouts. However, the building plan is said to be entirely Italian in idea, somehow in labor, and completion. Not far from where the hut of Degiat Abraha Waldai stands lives Mrs. Siti Muhammad, the granddaughter of Degiat Ibrahim Hussein of the lower Villaggio Azzurro, yet his daughter's daughter to be precise. Her grandfather, Degiat Ibrahim, died when she was at a very young age. Thus the history of her grandfather was told to her by her elders, and that's how she came to inherit the antiquity. According to Mrs. Siti Muhammad, she only remembers a few things left from the past. She was born and raised in her grandfather's hut and still lives in it, yet he parted them and life when she was at a quite young age. Her children were also born in the same hut as their mother. As so, others live within what's left of Villaggio Azzurro's huts nowadays, like the son of Fitaurari Tawalda Medhin, Mr. Nagash Tawalda Medhin, that still lives in his father's hut, whom also parted him and life at a young age. And a family member of Fitaurari Mikhail Kumfu that has been living in his uncle's hut, his father's brother to be precise, for about 80 years now. He was 5 years of age when he was brought from the Bezito area to live with his uncle at that young age. Mrs. Lemlem Abraha briefly explained that her father's hut, the Degiat Abraha Waldai, has 6 interior divisions, one of them being a guest room, while the top room in the attic, known for walled B if not mistaken in speech, was the master bedroom. She said that the hut looks like it's a single room, but that is far from reality once you enter. In fact, that's quite true. Back to the historical outlook of the timeline of the Italian colonization in Eritrea, it was about in the year 1880s that the Italian Colonization Command had taken some parts of the coastal areas of Eritrea under their control. They used the port and coasts as means of human and commercial transportation for quite some time. But later on, they were spotted to have developed their annexation agenda towards the highlands and escarpments of the rest of our country. Progressing up the highland to the capital Asmara, the colonization confirmed a design to make the capital and other cities along with it to look like the cities of Italy, having utterly an Italian architecture, if not European, yet wanting to erase its African and Eritrean sense. In fact, the Italian colonization had dreamt to make it an African Rome. Thus, the plan to make Asmara the African Rome, like the colonization had dreamt, started getting down to business by employing and enforcing many Eritreans at that time to do the man labor. It didn't stop there, but the colonization also did the same with the port city of Massawa and built transportation access to and from the port city, including the development and construction of the overall infrastructure of the capital city Asmara, Massawa, Karan, and many more. This being said, however, all of this was entirely with the man labor of native Eritreans working under the Italian administrator back then. More like hard labor. The result of the constructional strategy of the colonial administration under work was revealed in the years of 1920 to 1930s. Its revealing results turned out to be beautiful buildings and architectures known for their innovative magnificence in the cities earlier mentioned, especially our capital, Asmara. In Datum, paved roads, railroads, and the longest electric wire cableway transportation known for Telefrica was first introduced and used in Eritrea, which later on the British administration had dismantled and reinstalled elsewhere of their colonization's location in the world like India for their own profit. The colonization had undeniably developed infrastructure and constructional technologies during their time, but that was not the only thing that the annexation regime was making native Eritreans participate in. They had also been training and preparing them as soldiers for battles of the colonization's abduction agendas that was a dispersal plan in the Horn of Africa. Back then, an Italian colonel, Tasridi Saleta, was the leader of the Italian military in Eritrea, short after he announced that Eritrea had become an Italian annexation. And in the year 1885, he recruited many Eritrean men as unofficial soldier assistants in the military being created. Later in the year 1889, he established 4 battalions of native Eritrean soldiers, preparing them for an official military training by installing a military camp in Asmara. And these soldiers, for a fact, participated in various battles like the battles of Aghurdat, Adwa, and Quatit domestically, and internationally in both great global wars of World War I and World War II, where many were injured and died. Thereby, the colonization army gave many of them medal awards for their participation, ranking them from gold, silver, to copper. One of these native Eritrean soldiers in the Italian colonial army was the famous legend in the beginning of the Eritrean armed struggle for independence, Hamid Idris Awate. It was said that the legend Hamid Idris Awate had taken the rifle given to him as an Askari soldier of the colonization and took off to the fields of Eritrea in revolution against annexation and fired the first bullet for independence. Generally speaking, it is estimated that since then, about 1,100 native Eritrean Askari soldiers that participated in the battles had remained alive up until about the year 1993, 3 years after Eritrea's hard-won independence. Back to Villaggio Azzurro and the huts of Dagyat Abraha Waldai and his compatriots and the Italian colonial housing program. However, due to the request of the families living in Villaggio Azzurro at that period of time, a church was built in the vicinity. That church is known as Inda Abatachin. This church was requested to be built for the fact that the handicapped soldiers that had lived in Villaggio Azzurro, along with their families, had to travel long to find a church to worship or even to perform a funeral and a burial ceremony when necessary. With the building of this church around their vicinity, their shortcomings had been alleviated. A hut, or agdo in Tigrinya, indeed has a lot to do with our culture and traditional antiquity. In fact, its place in our traditional culture and national culture, a hut was represented as a nation, as a single warm home in a historical song by the legendary singer Ato Abraha Sagid, describing how he and every Eritrean had a single warm hut to live in, and how it was destroyed by many annexations, and may those who destroyed it find their bad deeds ahead. Yet resembling our nation as whole, describing not only the warmth, closure, and safe feeling of living together in unity, but how Eritrea had passed and overcame some of the harshest, self-profiting, and brutally fascist abduction agendas of its colonizers. Thus the words of Ato Abraha Sagid, Agdo neratni agdo naibene idom ais anu wasidom lay. Agdo neratni agdo naibene gamen neratni gamen naibene idom ais anu wasidom lay idom ais anu وسيدهم ذي أصبرا وللا ناوين الزللا كل انت أكيبن كنداقيني أحلا أصبرا يسمرا